Imagine two masked men, chaos unfolding in a bank. They open fire on officers, creating a terrifying scene. This is a recent event in Richmond, Virginia, where a bank was robbed. Tragically, a teller lost their life and a security guard was shot. Let's break down what happened step by step. First, the robbery occurred during business hours. The masked men entered the bank and threatened everyone inside. They demanded cash while brandishing weapons. Next, a silent alarm triggered, notifying the police. Officers arrived quickly, but the suspects opened fire. The chaotic scene resulted in injuries and loss of life. Once the robbery was over, the men fled the scene. Local law enforcement initiated a manhunt immediately. Their goal: capture the suspects and provide justice for the victims. In this frightening scenario, clarity is crucial. It's important to understand the potential risks of bank robberies. Awareness can help individuals stay safe in similar situations. This incident highlights the importance of security measures in banks. Enhanced protocols could prevent tragedies from occurring. In summary, a bank robbery unfolded in Richmond. Two armed men caused chaos, leading to a fatal shooting. As a community, we must remain vigilant and support safety solutions. If you want to stay updated on this story, follow local news channels. Share this information, and let's keep our community informed. As the chaos ensued, frantic customers and employees ducked for cover, their hearts racing with terror as they witnessed the violence erupting around them. The sound of gunfire echoed, amplifying the panic that gripped the bank. Among them, a young woman clutched her child tightly, whispering words of comfort despite the horror unfolding just feet away. The masked men shouted demands, their voices laden with urgency, as they waved their weapons threateningly. "Give us the cash, now!" one of them bellowed, forcing a teller to comply under the gunpoint pressure. The air thickened with tension, each second stretching into an eternity as fear permeated every corner of the bank. Desperate to survive, the employees scrambled to gather the money, glancing nervously at the intruders while praying for a miracle. Amidst the turmoil, a brave security guard took a step forward, attempting to defuse the situation, only to find himself caught in the crossfire of a nightmare. As the frantic scene unfolded, each decision made could mean the difference between life and death. Just as the situation reached its peak, the piercing sound of police sirens filled the air, signaling their rapid response. The masked men exchanged nervous glances, their earlier confidence wavering as the reality of their predicament crashed upon them. "We need to hurry," one yelled, urgency marking his every word as they further pressed the terrified teller to surrender the funds. The tension in the air shifted, transforming into a desperate gamble for both the robbers and those held captive. Outside, the police officers immediately positioned themselves, ready to confront the threats within the bank and protect the innocent lives at stake. Suddenly, shots erupted from within the bank, forcing officers to take cover behind their patrol cars, their faces hardened with determination. As the dust began to settle, the horror of the day lingered in the air, a stark reminder of the fragility of safety. The community of Richmond mourned the loss and rallied together, determined to support each other in the face of such tragedy, seeking healing and justice. The bank's interior was chaotic, each corner filled with the echoes of despair and fear. Customers pressed against walls, hoping to remain unseen as the masked men grew ever more erratic with their demands. The teller, shaking uncontrollably, handed over bundles of cash while glancing at the fearful faces in the room, silently pleading for it to end. Outside, the police deployed a tactical team, their movements synchronized as they prepared for the imminent confrontation. As they set up a perimeter, a detective noticed a small group of civilians by the bank entrance, panic-stricken yet hopeful that their ordeal would soon resolve. With strategic caution, the team communicated over radios, sharing positions and assessing the scene. Time seemed suspended, the harrowing reality of the robbery felt suffocating, as moments turned to minutes, stretching thin across the suspicion and dread hanging heavily in the air. The officers' resolve intensified, knowing that every choice could mean saving lives or escalating the already volatile situation. Then a loud shout broke through the tension as one of the suspects attempted to flee out the back door, prompting an immediate reaction from the wait staff, who had been holding their breath, clinging to the hope that this nightmare would soon be over. With swift precision, the tactical team sprang into action, positioning themselves strategically around the building, their eyes scanning for any sign of movement. One officer whispered instructions into his earpiece, coordinating with the nearby units to monitor all exits and ensure no one escaped unnoticed. Inside, the robber's panic was palpable, and he abruptly turned toward the remaining hostages, now visibly shaken. "Sit down. Don't move," he shouted, his voice trembling with a mix of fear and aggression. The remaining employees, trembling and pale, complied instantly as they absorbed the reality that their lives hung by a thread. A nearby customer, a middle-aged man, caught the glint of a firearm in the suspect's hand, and panic surged through him as he recognized the danger of any sudden movement. Outside, officers exchanged knowing glances, they understood the stakes were rising, and every moment spent waiting could lead to another round of gunfire. A commotion erupted inside as the sounds of shuffling feet echoed through the bank, further heightening the dreadful anticipation of what would happen next. As the tension mounted, the situation deteriorated faster than anyone anticipated. The lead robber, voice laced with desperation, barked, "This is your last chance. Hand over everything." He waved his weapon menacingly, commanding everyone's attention. The teller, dread washing over his face, struggled to collect the scattered cash from the counter, each crumpled bill feeling heavier in his hands. Outside, the tactical team remained vigilant, listening intently as bursts of frantic shouts resonated from within the bank, their hearts racing as uncertainty clouded their next move. In that critical moment, a distant sound, a police helicopter, hovered above, slicing through the chaos, its presence a signal of hope and impending rescue. Amidst the chaos, a sudden explosion of sound from the bank's entrance startled everyone, as the lead robber flung open the door to make a desperate bid for freedom. His heart pounding, he burst into the open air, scanning frantically for any escape route while the realization of the imminent danger hit him like a tidal wave. Officers on the scene were quick to react, two of them aimed their weapons, issuing commands for him to freeze. "Drop your weapon," they shouted in unison, their eyes locked on the suspect, ready to act if he made a wrong move. The robber hesitated, adrenaline coursing through his veins as he weighed his options. Meanwhile, the tension inside the bank remained intolerable, the hostages barely daring to breathe, knowing their fates hung on the decisions made by a man driven to desperation. The robber, caught in the blinding spotlight of the police, felt the pressure escalate. With a split-second decision, he shouted back, "I'll shoot," waving his firearm as a shield against the encroaching officers. Inside the bank, the hostages recoiled at the sound of his threat, hearts pounding as they feared for their lives. The tactical team communicated rapidly, weighing the risk of negotiation against the need for immediate action. "We need to contain him, now," an officer intoned, his pulse racing as the gravity of the situation intensified. With a calculated move, they advanced, seeking to close the distance and diffuse the escalating confrontation, bolstered by the knowledge that time was of the essence. "Stay back. Don't come any closer," the robber yelled, his voice reverberating with panic and authority as he waved the gun, desperate to maintain control. As the dust settled and the echoes of gunfire faded, the community of Richmond began the long journey toward healing. Together, they mourned the loss and reflected on the heartbreaking chaos of that day, vowing to support one another and reinforce safety measures to prevent such tragedies from happening again. An uneasy silence enveloped the bank as the standoff escalated, heartbeats racing and breaths held tightly in fear. The remaining robber, still holding his weapon, glanced nervously between the officers outside and the terrified hostages, sensing their fear but also the determination of law enforcement. "You don't want this to end badly," he threatened, speaking through clenched teeth, completely aware that his next move could seal the fate of everyone involved. As he tried to regain control over the situation, the tactical team remained poised, ready to act at a moment's notice, each officer well aware that their training had equipped them for this very moment. Moments stretched like hours, the tension almost suffocating as thoughts raced through the mind of each person present, hoping against hope for a peaceful resolution. The robber took a deep breath, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for a way out. "Just let us go," he pleaded suddenly, his voice cracking under the pressure of the standoff. The room was a cyclone of emotions. The hostages felt a flicker of hope at the thought of escape while the officers tightened their grip on their weapons, bewildered by the shift in tone. "We can work something out," the robber continued, desperation mixing with fear, as he inched toward the door, revealing his frail humanity. The tactical team felt the weight of anxiety pressing down on them, and with every passing second, the urgency to resolve the standoff mounted. "You need to listen to me," an officer called out, trying to reach the robber's wavering resolve. "We want to help you, but you have to put down your weapon." A flicker of doubt crossed the robber's face, his grip tightening as self-preservation battled against guilt for endangering the innocent lives around him. The frantic hostages remained frozen, their eyes darting between the robber and the door, contemplating their only path to safety. "This isn't just about you anymore," another officer shouted, his voice commanding yet filled with empathy, recognizing the fragile humanity still present in the situation. "You don't want to hurt anyone else. Think about your family." Time hung in the air, thick and palpable, as the potential for both negotiation and disaster loomed heavy. The robber's breaths came in sharp gasps, each inhalation filled with the tension of life-altering decisions, and he hesitated once more, his mind racing with conflicting thoughts of escape versus accountability. Every pair of eyes in the bank remained locked on his movements, suspended in a collective hope that reason might yet prevail. As silence deepened, the gravity of the moment intensified, binding everyone in place. The robber, still clutching the weapon, struggled to process the officer's words, their attempts to reach his conscience echoing within him. "You don't understand? This is my only chance," he spat, the anguish in his voice revealing the desperation of a man trapped in a corner. Outside, the tactical team prepared to take the next step, understanding that the stakes had never been higher. "You think we want this to keep happening?" one officer pressed, his voice calm yet filled with urgency. "Let's talk about a way out for you without violence." A flicker of nervousness crossed the robber's face, and for a fleeting moment, it appeared as if he might yield. The hostages drew closer together, exchanging glances that spoke volumes of unspoken fears and a shared wish for safety. "You can choose to do the right thing," another officer declared, reaching out with sincerity that seemed to cut through the tension swirling around them. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, the lines of choices drawn firmly in the sand as the robber pondered his next move while the officer's resolve tightened like a noose around the escalating conflict. The masked man's eyes, wild with panic and frustration, reflected the turmoil swirling within him. "I didn't want it to come to this," he shouted, straining against the weight of his decisions, the gun trembling in his grip as guilt began to creep in. Each word seemed to hang in the air like a lifeline, an opportunity for him to break free from the cycle of violence spiraling out of control. The officers watched closely, their expressions a mixture of compassion and caution, keenly aware that he was teetering on the edge between surrendering and succumbing to further desperation. "We can find a way to help you," one officer called out, his tone softer, an appeal to the humanity that lingered still within the robber. The hostages stood collectively silent, sensing the shift, their hearts pounding with a fragile hope that this moment could turn into a resolution rather than a tragedy. "You don't have to do this," another voice insisted, cutting through the tension, as the dynamics within the bank shifted from sheer terror to a glimmer of possibility. In that heartbeat of time, the robber faltered, his mind racing with the stark reality of what lay ahead should he choose violence over peace, his conscience battling back against the chaos he had unleashed. The stillness of the moment felt electric, as the murmurs of the hostages mingled with the subtle rustling of uniforms outside. "You think you're the only one suffering?" the officer continued, his voice steady yet empathetic. "You have a choice right now. You can walk away from this before more lives are lost." The robber's composure wavered, eyes flicking nervously between the pleading faces of the hostages and the unwavering officers outside the door. Each heartbeat thundered in the silence as he fought against the urge to grasp the gun tighter, grappling with the burden of choices that could change everything. "Just let us go," he shouted again, desperation clawing at his throat, the weight of his decisions pressing heavily against him. In that fleeting moment, the air shimmered with the possibility of resolution, hope flickering in the eyes of those trapped within the bank, praying for a miracle to break the cycle of fear and violence. The tension in the bank reached a fever pitch as both sides weighed their next moves, realization dawning on the robber that every choice had monumental consequences. The grip on his weapon slackened ever so slightly, a sign of the internal battle raging inside him, as the officers continued their efforts to reach him through empathy. "Think about the lives at stake here," one officer urged, making eye contact, trying to breach the emotional wall he had constructed. "Your life matters too, but this isn't the way to make it better." The atmosphere shifted ever so subtly, a flicker of recognition passing through the robber's eyes as he began to truly listen, torn between the desperation that had driven him, and the humanity still clinging to life within him. In that charged moment, a spark of realization sparked within the robber, each second stretching as he grappled with the fate of those watching him, the gravity of his choices crashing down like a tidal wave. Paralyzed in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, he cast a glance at the hostages, fear etched on their faces, and for the first time, their humanity struck a chord deep within him. "What have I done?" he murmured, a tremor in his voice revealing a glimpse of remorse as the line between predator and prey blurred. The officers seized the moment, their hearts racing in tandem with the robber's revelations, urging him further towards surrender and redemption. "It's not too late to change your path," one officer insisted, voice gentle yet insistent, as the tension within the bank began to shift towards a fragile hope. "We're here to support you. Let us help." The robber's gun lowered slightly, trembling in his hand as he processed the flood of emotions rushing through him. Fear and regret warred fiercely within, and he found himself staring into the eyes of the hostages, each pleading gaze igniting a flicker of compassion in his heart. I didn't want anyone to get hurt," he uttered, his voice barely above a whisper, wavering under the sheer weight of what he had done. Outside, the tactical team listened intently, sensing the changing tide within the bank as seconds stretched into minutes filled with uncertainty. "You can still make this right," an officer called out, emboldened by the shift in the robber's demeanor, hoping that every word might seal a path to a peaceful resolution. The atmosphere was taut with anticipation, as a glimmer of possibility illuminated the darkness that had enveloped the situation. "Please, just let them go," he pleaded, the cracks in his bravado deepening, revealing a humanity long buried beneath layers of desperation. As the standoff lingered, the realization that hope and redemption could emerge from chaos hung lightly in the air. The robber took a trembling step back, uncertainty flooding his expression as he glanced at the terrified faces surrounding him. "I don't want to hurt anyone," he stammered, the weight of his actions crashing over him like an unrelenting tide. The officers outside exchanged glances, sensing the potential shift in the standoff, ready to seize the moment without escalating the tension further. "You have the power to change this," one officer urged gently, his heart racing with the fragile hope that understanding could triumph over fear. The masked man's eyes flickered with doubt, memories of his own struggle rising to the forefront, devouring the bravado he'd clung to. Just then, a small voice broke through the silence, the young child still clutched close by his mother's side. "Please, don't hurt us," the child whispered, innocence cutting through the chaos like a beacon of light. The robber's gaze softened as he locked eyes with the child, the innocence within pleading for safety. I don't want to hurt anyone," he stammered, his bravado crumbling under the weight of the moment. The mother whispered words of encouragement to her child, trying to convey that they were safe, while the hearts of all those in the bank began to stir with the flicker of hope. "Just put down the gun," one of the officers urged gently, the urgency of the situation palpable yet tempered with empathy. "It's not too late." The tension in the air thickened, each second feeling monumental as the robber weighed his choices, the voices of the hostages echoing in his mind, a chorus of fear but also of life. He took a hesitant step back, his grip on the weapon loosening as realization washed over him, he didn't have to be the monster they'd feared. The officers remained steady, their own breaths held in collective anticipation, as the bank waited in silence for the unfolding resolution, the first signs of redemption shimmering on the horizon. "Please," the masked man begged, his voice trembling as he cast his gaze over the frightened faces, "I just want to make it out alive." In that moment of vulnerability, the walls of desperation began to crack, revealing the man beneath the mask. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. Just let us go," he repeated, desperation mingling with a glimmer of remorse in his voice. The realization slowly dawned on him that he held the power to end the nightmare. As the dust finally settled, a fragile peace began to unfold in that bank where chaos had reigned just moments before. The masked man slowly lowered his weapon, surrendering not just to the officers but to the humanity he had rediscovered within himself. In that space, hope ignited, echoing through the hearts of all present,